Currently, I serve at Fremont First United Methodist Church. In March of this year, Fremont was devastated by a state-shaking flood of historic proportions. We found that there were over 1,400 FEMA claims just within our county, Dodge County alone. That was 22 to 23% of the entire flood damage throughout the state. And as the United Methodist pastor at one of the United Methodist churches in town, there was a need for us to step up as a church, for UMCOR to step up as an organization and assist with the disaster relief. We have been heavily involved in not only the individual work, but also on the strategic and organizing level, making sure that there is a commitment to justice and a distribution of goods and services to all people. And so there are a lot of populations that would typically be marginalized within any community. Floods tend to hit the most disenfranchised populations first, just by virtue of how flood levees are built. And so it has been great as a pastor to not only work on the normal side, the worship and the care and all of the things that you attribute to church, but also to work on the structural side and the bureaucratic side with how do we make sure there is justice and equity in how we distribute goods and services to all people throughout our community. So at a previous church, I was sitting around at home gatherings right after I got there, and I was talking with all of our people and asking who are you and what are you passionate about, and sharing a bit of my story and how I felt called at a young age to make a difference and how I felt like God was calling me. And there was a young girl who latched onto that idea. And her mom came up to me after a meeting one night and said, "Hey, just want to let you know, my daughter and I had a conversation last night. I want to let you know kind of where she's at and get your opinion on something." She's in middle school. She was a sixth grader at the time, and she kind of feels like maybe God might be calling her to make a difference too. And so she gathered some friends, and they want to know if they can start organizing and planning some service organizations, some service opportunities for our church. Would you be comfortable with that? And I kind of said, listen, if you have a pastor who wants to squash that in middle school kids, you need to get a new pastor. And so she put together and she organized with some friends what started as one service project and blossomed into a number of service projects that our entire church got behind. And it started as a sixth grade girl standing up and saying, "Hey, I feel a calling to make a difference in other people's lives, and I've heard that there are people all across the world that don't have the same capacities and the same accessibility to school and education that we do. And so we want to collect some money, and we want to send bikes to kids in an orphanage that they had a connection with in Cambodia." And it was a cool idea. And they thought maybe we could get a few bikes, maybe we could get 2 or 3 bikes, and that'd be really awesome. There were 2 or 3 kids kind of leading this project at the time. And the church really rallied, and they sent, I think, 11 bikes the first year. And it was a great thing. And so we got to see all the kids, ride these bikes into the sanctuary, and they ran out and did a really cool thing. And the church really got behind it and supported it. And they did it again the next year, and they raised even more money for bikes. And then they started collecting food for the soup kitchen right there in town. And they challenged another church. They've been challenging another church for a few years. What I found is that even though we lost, the church that we challenged had to bring in a structural engineer to assess where they could and could not store the cans of soup in their building because they were so overwhelming the building. It was just incredible, just ridiculous. Out of a young girl who thought, maybe God is using me, and maybe if I tell other people, they might come on board too. And so they're giving bikes to kids who are, we found out, escaping human trafficking and sexual slavery so they can get to school and have a future. They're collecting food for rural communities throughout Kansas and Nebraska, so much that a church is in danger of collapsing their building because we've seen God work through young lives.
This is my first appointment, first pastoral appointment. I'm just starting year 4 here, and we have done a lot of work together as a leadership team, moved from a regular United Methodist structure to a single board structure, and in that process our council did a lot of work, just kind of looking at the community and the current realities of stuff going on in the church. And I think they have just, through the process of prayer and retreat and all this study together, I saw them kind of turn into people who were really aware of things going on around them that I'm not sure they would have been before. we started hearing people mention different things about needs in the community, and noticing that we had space that would be great for something in particular. And listening to what's going on in the community, hearing that we were losing teachers because they couldn't find childcare in Lexington. And so all of those things together, by the time it all came together, we end up with this amazing childcare ministry that all of a sudden is like breathing life into this congregation that it was pretty quiet when I got here. There wasn't a lot of things going on, but it's just seeing people's gifts come to life, and that to me, it was totally the presence of the Holy Spirit working in and through these people, and showing us something that we wouldn't have seen without the time around the table together, the time away from the normal work of the church, but the times that we stepped away. They're just really letting God point the direction.
At Cozad United Methodist Church, we're located right across the street from an elementary school. And each Wednesday afternoon, about 3 o'clock, 125 kids walk over here to worship together. It's an absolutely amazing thing. They've done it for over 20 years. And what's unique about that is half of the 125 kids that come over aren't connected to this church at all. They just come over with their friends, word of mouth, said it's a fun place to be, and it's a safe place to be. And they get here, and we feed them a snack. We run around out in the playground, here at the church, and we sing songs. We've got some great music leaders that just whoop these kids into a worship and praise experience. It's absolutely amazing. Probably what's most exciting for me is that the kids stay for basically Sunday school on Wednesday. It's just Bible school. And for a half hour, we break up into the different classes in 2 grades together in one class. And we get into the Bible, into the sense where when you're done with Kids of the Kingdom, as you go from kindergarten through 5th grade, by the time you're done, you know your way around the Bible. You know what a chapter is and a verse is, in the Bible, and some of the classic stories.
Transition into ministry program, I've enjoyed the getting together. We have a spring retreat and then a kind of a fall summer retreat. Those times have been really helpful for gathering ideas. Each time we gather, we learn something different. And those are times outside of the local church when we gather together. But on top of that, like when I first got to my first appointment, right out of seminary, they have a transition team set up. And so that transition team helped me avoid a lot of pitfalls, helped me to look out for things that I can look out for, things that's helpful for me to know. So that transition into ministry committee kind of was there for me all throughout my first 2 years. So that was very helpful for me as well, that I have a group of people that is there just for me, not to achieve any other purposes, or goals of the church, but just to support me, to be there to help me with whatever concerns that I have, or whatever ideas that I have, that they can say, hey, that's not a good time to implement this right now, or yeah, go for it. And so the transition into ministry program with that committee in that local church for my first 2 years was very helpful.
In my previous appointment, we did a lot of work with people who were just about ready to come out of prison. And part of what we were doing was trying to help them find a way to be engaged in the things that we take for granted, knowing how to use an ATM, knowing how to do a bank account, how to look for a job because you can no longer apply anyway except for online. And so we worked with the the program Released and Restored that works with people who are in prison and who are in the process of coming out. In my current appointment, we started just in June, we started a new program called Celebrate Recovery. And it grew out of our desire to work with people in the prison, they're in the jail, in Dawson County Jail. And we have somebody who is working on that, and we'll be starting in June. We'll start a program there. And it's the same kind of thing, working with people who need to find a community of people who help them figure out how to live life differently. And so Celebrate Recovery is about our habits, our hurts, our hang-ups, and our addictions, and how God can walk with us as we discover a sense of wholeness and resurrection. So both of those, working with that particular population, has been really powerful.